Welcome to another episode of Swine Versation. We have two great guests today from Elanco Animal Health, Dr. Roger Arentson and Dr. Michael Shields. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
We thought it'd be a timely conversation / swine versation to talk about Skycis, some of the value heading into the fall with some of the markets and updates happening. Can I get a background of you and Roger and Michael?
Yes, I'm a swine nutritionist. I was trained at Iowa State, and I've been with Elanco about 13 years. My role is a technical consultant in Minnesota.
Yes, I'm also a swine nutritionist. I was trained a PhD at North Carolina State, and I live in North Carolina.
So one of the hot topics is the current markets. What are you guys seeing right now in the field, and what are you to expect this fall?
Well, we know that feed prices have been pretty tough with corn and soybean meal prices over the last while, and we really see those being for the next 12 to 18 months. They'll continue to be high, unfortunately. A little reprieve. The price of corn, the cost of corn has gone down a little bit over the last couple of months, and distillers grains, which is an opportunity to moderate the feed costs, have gone down as well. So unfortunately, when you add distillers grains to diets, you lose energy content of the diet. And as we know, fat is priced out of diets a long time ago with its use in biodiesel. And so the cost of energy to swine diets is very high right now, and likely will remain high.
And usually, as you think, formulated nutritionists would be thinking about pulling energy going into the fall, but because all the energy is already out of the diet, feed conversion is still very important going into the fall and even the winter. Whereas before and in the past, you would be okay with taking energy out of the diet and being okay with a little bit of feed conversion with corn being where it used to be.
So we talked a little bit about Skycis. Can you give a brief overview of what the product is?
Skycis is a product of Elanco. It's been on the market since 2012. The actual chemical compound is Arentson. It is ionophore, and it's used. What it does is attaches to in the gut of the animal, attaches to the gram-positive cells, and as a result, sodium and water influx into gram-positive cells in the gut of the animal. And as a result, you get more gram-negative bacterial cells versus gram-positive. And through the fermentation process, it ferments undigested carbohydrate, and you get a more propionic versus acetic and butyric volatile fatty acids produced. And so propionic goes to glucose, which is a prized molecule by the animal. And so you just get more energy with more propionic versus acetic and butyric. And also you have less waste gases produced. And so overall, you get more energy, and animals, of course, require energy for growth. And so that can be used for more productive purposes.
So the label for Skycis says you have to feed it for at least 4 weeks between 13.6 to 27.2 grams per ton, which is 0.3 to 0.6 pounds per ton, or 15 to 30 parts per million. It's labeled for increased weight gain for all from 13.6 to 27.2 grams per ton, and improved feed efficiency for 18.1 to 27.2 grams per ton. The good thing about it is there's no VFD required, and it's a 0-day withdrawal when feeding according to the label directions. We'll talk about safety later, but the one thing you have to be careful of is that you do not feed Skycis when you have liquid tiamulin or Denagard in the water, or Denagard premix in the feed.
So as we approach the changing markets, how can Skycis be a helpful tool for producers?
So most of our producers feed sort of all dosages of Skycis, 13.6 and a few even 27.2, but most of our producers feed 13.6 grams per ton of Skycis, the most common dosage that's used. If producers feed 13.6 grams per ton, feed gain is not on the label, but we have several studies, in fact, 8, that actually show increase or improvement in feed gain if Skycis is fed. And so, in fact, about a 1.44% improvement in feed gain. And so this results in about 9 pounds of feed savings if Skycis is fed from 50 to 280 pounds. And so the way that translates is that feed gain would pay for Skycis in the diet. In fact, it pays for it plus an additional about 42 cents over the next 9 months per pig. And so that can add a lot of value to producers just from a feed gain standpoint.
Which is really interesting, Roger, because we used to always say that just feed Skycis and the feed conversion will pay for itself. But now with the extra 42 cents, there's more of an ROI there.
Yeah.
Also, as I mentioned on the label, you would expect, based on our internal research, about 1.5% improvement in average daily gain. And the majority of our studies have shown, interestingly enough, a 0.36 improvement in yield from a carcass standpoint, which is about $1 a pig.
What about space and variation, Roger?
One thing we've noticed in some of our studies is that we've looked at the growth rate of the smaller pigs within a population versus the largest pigs in a population. And those that are smaller, they have more response in terms of average daily gain than the larger pigs. In fact, one study shows that pigs that were smaller at the beginning had about a 9-pound improvement in overall gain versus those fed control. Whereas the larger pigs, it was only about 3 pounds heavier if they're fed Skycis. And so what happens is the pigs that are bigger are growing maximally, and they use that additional energy and reduced feed intake, and they enjoy a better feed gain effect. Also, we've noticed in the studies that we've done that have had several marketing events or cuts. We've noticed that pigs in the last cut or marketing event, they will have pigs that have had Skycis have a larger response to Skycis in terms of average daily gain than those in the first cuts. And so those pigs that are smaller may have had more challenges get to the feeder. They use those mouthfuls of precious mouthfuls of feed that they get that would have a higher energy content due to Skycis. They use that for the productive growth response. And so if you can move those smaller pigs up into the grid and receive a higher value upon harvest, that creates great value for producers.
So what do producers need to be aware of if they're interested in feeding Skycis in their diets?
So as I mentioned earlier, you have to be careful when feeding Skycis because it has a negative interaction with liquid tiamulin or Denigard premix. So the animals, it will have a toxic effect and potentially have a negative effect on the animals. So Elanco offers a lot of good resources with this. Roger and I are happy to provide any sort of education with producers, veterinarians, consultants, nutritionists. We have tags that can hang on water medicators that will say no, Skycis in the feed, no liquid tiamulin. We also offer help with educating toll mills or walking through company feed mills and just doing audits on how to implement Skycis. And we've done that with several customers here over the last couple of years, and we've had a lot of success with getting confidence from the producers in that they can feed Skycis correctly.
So we've got a lot of good information here today. We want to kind of wrap up on, is there one key takeaway regarding Skycis that you want to leave our viewers with? Let's start with you, Roger.
We're looking at the markets over the next 9 months. Just the average or probably the lowest fixed time value or net value that you would receive would be about $2.30 per pig if you're feeding 13.6 grams per ton of Skycis, from 50 to 280 pounds of body weight. And on a fixed weight basis, the minimum net value that you would receive would be about $1.50 per pig. So those values can really help to improve the bottom line for producers.
And I think for me, in the past when feeding Skycis, we've always pulled it and used it more as a space tool and not fed it in the fall. But because feed prices are still remain very high, you can take advantage of the extra energy in the diet and help with feed conversion and still see an ROI from feeding Skycis.
So Dr. Roger Arentson, Dr. Michael Shields, thanks for joining us today on Swine Versation.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.